Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to be able to present to you about the bill of material or BOM setup. I think I could talk about inventory for hours and hours. So I am definitely going to do my best to make sure I get through all of this in 30 minutes, but just know that we have a ton of consultants that are great at helping you set up and managing inventory and all those things here at Fourlane. And it is not just myself that gets excited to talk about inventory, but there's a lot of us. So hopefully today's session will help some of y'all be able to see how you can truly manage your inventory manufacturing and outsourcing included in that inside of QuickBooks. A few things here about us at Fourlane. So we are the #1 QuickBooks Enterprise team. We have been since 2010. This year, we've been really proud and excited to share with everyone that we've got 8 of the top 100 pro advisors on our team. So that knowledge and expertise is just continuing to grow and being recognized for that. So hopefully you will also be able to get the experience of talking to one of our top pro advisors. We not only represent QuickBooks, but we also represent NetSuite and Acumatica as well. We really try to maximize QuickBooks to its full potential, setting it up to operate as an ERP system and get the most out of it. If you are ready for that next level with NetSuite and Acumatica, we are here to help and support you as well. We're experts in accounting and software, so not just one. We're really coming from both perspectives, not having to have two different people kind of give you their input. You get one person that's really guiding you on both. We really like to be the strategic partner for change management. Making change is hard, and we like to be that partner, be part of your team, helping you really see how we can get to that next level, regardless of what comes up. Okay, so our BOM setup or bill of materials. A couple of things that I want to mention that we're going to talk about and cover today in this session. Inventory assembly item setup. That is how we are going to be able to track our bill of materials and kind of do all of the things inside of the system. So we're going to talk about our raw materials. How do we have to set those up in order to get this to work properly? Our overhead cost. Sometimes we've got outsource cost. How do we do that? How do we manage that? Sub-assemblies, or some people call those nested assemblies. So that's definitely something we're going to look at today. And then what happens behind the assemblies? Like, what's the accounting and the GL movement behind that? Movement between raw material quantity to our finished good quantity. So those are our topics that we're going to cover today. If there's anything that you want to also be able to see, please go ahead and put that into the chat. Hopefully I'll be able to answer those. But as I've got a lot to cover, and as I mentioned, I like to talk a lot, may or may not be able to get to those. So I will do my best. Okay, so we're starting in QuickBooks Enterprise, and I'm just got the home screen open. So prior to this, right, we do want to make sure in order to track inventory in the system, we've got to set up our company preferences. So turn on inventory and purchase orders so that they are active. Also, if we are, reserving inventory quantity available for pending builds, we want to make sure that that is all set up along with our quantity on sales orders. And if we don't want to have negative inventory, we have to make sure that we warn. So check this box and not to allow negative quantities. Today, I do not have that preference turned on because I want to show you all the things. I've also got advanced inventory settings for sites, kind of the whole 9 yards in here. So make sure that your company preferences are set up so that it is tracking your inventory properly. So my assumption is we've gone through all of that. We're not going to cover that in this webinar. Okay, so our item list. Our item list is where we are going to see and set up all of our raw materials, our inventory assemblies, which is where our bill of materials are going to live. This is where kind of the magic happens. So I want to first go through and I want to talk about how do we set up an item to ensure that it is going to be available for my bill of materials. So the first thing I want to go through is if we've got a service item. So these are things that you can include for internal purposes or external purposes, right? So either one there. When I first come to this screen, I only see I've got one account, right? So this box right here is where the magic happens. When I click that box, it opens up this service item to be a double-sided item. And what I mean by double-sided is that I have two GL accounts that this item can go to. So when I purchase this item, I have the ability to put an account that I want it to go into when I purchase it. So I'm going to talk about, our outsourced labor. So a lot of my manufacturing clients, they will outsource like painting or anodizing, or any of the other things. Sometimes it's a whole part that will get outsourced, right? So if I want to be able to track in in an account that allows for me to see if I have a good quantity, good value that I'm saying is included in my manufacturing, my recommendation is to set up an other current asset account so it goes on your balance sheet, which allows you to reconcile that account. And I have an example here for WIP outsourced labor. And so that's where I would put my outsourced painting, for example. I would not have this account as part of my inventory accounts, right? It would be a sub account of that, but not included in my total inventory accounts because that is not going to be tracked on my inventory valuation report. Okay, so double-sided item for service, how I get there is checking this magic box that allows for me to see the double-sided. And I have the ability to add an expense account for my purchases. And if I am selling this item, I have the ability to record revenue, but we know most of the time, right? And in some situations, this item may not be sold. So that's our service item. I want to take a look at our non-inventory. So we see that we have our magic box, same similar situation. Also, let's go take a look at my inventory part. So my inventory part, by default, QuickBooks has it going to 3 accounts: cost of goods sold, asset, and income. My raw material that I am going to put in the as part of my bill of materials needs to be set up as an inventory part if I'm tracking quantity and value for that item, right? So we want to make sure that this is all set up properly. So this sample file has all kinds of things already set up and included in it. That I'm not going to go through because we really want to focus on the bill of materials. So I do have an assembly item that I've got set up, and I want to cover these things in this webinar today. So what is my bill of materials and how do I get these things in there? So when I go in and I set up a new assembly item, it looks blank, right? And so again, my list of all the things that I want to put in my bill of materials needs to, or it's easier if you set those up first and then build your assembly. You can add them here on the screen, but sometimes it's just nice to already have those set up to the right accounts and then start adding. The assembly item, we're just going to do a finished good one here. We want to make sure that as we are building our bill of materials, we're really looking at, our formula or our raw material to equal a quantity one of a finished good. So even if we do batching, right? A batch can produce X amount of eaches. And so our bill of materials should total a quantity of one of that finished good. One of the things that I feel like I've found easiest to start adding my raw materials to my bill of materials is by clicking on, and I did that kind of fast, so I'm going to come back, clicking on this full view, and then I could start adding from here. So you can select the things that make up your formula, that make up your, um, you know, any overhead cost, any outsource, like we talked about. So my outsourced paint. So I would want to ensure that this is all set up already on my item list and start adding from here. I did want to talk about this outsourced paint item that I've got set up in here because we know that um, outsourced painting costs can increase. One of the things that we recommend is putting this cost at $1. That way, if it goes up, right, I can, basically add the quantity or update the quantity in my assembly or my bill of materials because it does vary. Now, other times it may make sense that if it is a fixed fee, so for example, maybe my outsourced paint is a fixed fee of $25 for everything I do. If that is the case, you would put your cost at 25 and then you would put a quantity one of your bill of materials. I'm going to go back and restate something just to make sure I got this out correctly. So if I have outsourced paint and the painting on each of my different finished goods can fluctuate. So it can go on one finished good, it can be, an hour. On another finished good, it could be 45 minutes. I then set it at the dollar so I can update the quantity for my individual finished good items, right, to reflect the appropriate cost. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have questions, let me know. So that's why I have the dollar here. I'm going with the assumption or the example today that this does fluctuate on my finished goods. Okay. Okay. So I now that I have my outsourced paint, I would be able to go in and say 12. It takes $12 for processing on this finished good item. And then I would be able to add all the other components that make up this finished good. One thing that I do want to talk about and touch on is sub-assemblies or nested assemblies. So sub-assemblies are, I mean, the system can process sub-assemblies and handle that. It is highly capable of doing all the things. You can have multiple nested sub-assemblies within one process. So if this 3000 UL assembly that I added also had an assembly within it, right? Then I would have multiple nested sub-assemblies. Okay. The system can handle that. It does work. And I will show you an easy way to include, as we're doing build assemblies, to check a box so that it builds all of them. You don't have to individually build them. Okay, so all of these components and this sub-assemblies bill of materials have to be done first before I can go build my finished good. And that is something that QuickBooks is really good at. Okay, so this is where we would add that sub-assembly or nested assembly. Okay, so I've got an example already set up. I'm not making things up so great today. So we're going to just look at a component that's already built. So this is the full bill of materials, right? From here, I am just saying in order to build 1000-MC finished good, it takes all of these components between my labor, my other charges. I've got non-inventory components on here, and then inventory parts along with a sub-assembly, right? So this total bill of materials is 2458.65, right? So all of that is going to be reflected in the build assembly when we get that done, as long as I don't make any modifications and changes. So I've got a question where it's asking if I have a quantity one of a component and I make a change in my build assembly, does it update this bill of materials? And so the answer to that is no. If I am doing a build assembly and it's real time and I'm making modifications in the build assembly window, just to show you what that ask is. Okay, so if I make a change in one of the items here, right, and I say the quantity needed is 2, right? The ask is, does this, if I build and close this, does this change that bill of material list on my item list? And the answer to that is no. Okay, it is just pulling out the inventory needed for this assembly. So great question. Thank you for asking that. Right. So bill of materials equals quantity one, even if I'm doing batches. Okay. All right. So I want to talk about our accounts that we have set up here. In our accounts, the assembly item can only hit one set of GL accounts. So if an item is supposed to go to multiple GLs, revenues, cost of goods sold, however we want to do that, this assembly item should not be updated every single time we want to use it, right? You either have to change the chart of account structure or we've got to set up a different item because this item, right, 1000 MC should only hit one income, one asset, one cost of goods sold. If I come in and change my accounts, right, that is set up in this item record, the system, right, will make changes. First of all, you got to do it in single user mode, and that's not super fun, but the system will make changes to retroactively. It will ask you, do you want to retroactively make this change or just for future transactions? So that's not a good way to set up your workflows. There's better alternative ways that we can help with. Okay, so one set of GL accounts. Okay, so now that we have kind of looked at setting up my finished good item and the bill of materials, I want to walk through as we are putting in our cost for things. So what I mean by that is this outsource paint. I want to be able to show how we can enter the bill and the accounting behind it as well. So if I go in and let me just see, yep. So let me just run a quick report on this. So we've got a bill. This is the bill that is going to record my outsourced paint cost. This is using the item. The reason why I'm using the item is one, so I can run a quick report and I can see all the transactions of the item, right? But I also am able to know that it's hitting the right GL account. So the bill behind this is putting the cost to my WIP outsource labor account. Okay. So when I go in and I look at my build assembly, and this is the assembly that's pulling out all of my finished good and building my 1000-MC item, right? It is basically taking the dollars, right, out of those items, out of their GL accounts and quantities, if it's inventory, and moving that to the finished good. So let me show you the journal entry behind that. So all of my raw materials, all of my bill of material costs to make a quantity one of my finished good has now, when I post that build assembly, it is now taking all the dollars, right? And this 1000 MC transaction needed $50 of my outsourced paint to be included in my finished good inventory. Right. So it's taken the dollars out of here, updated quantity on items, and any other item type that's included. It's also now putting that amount in my finished good inventory account and value. Okay. Okay. So when we do this, we now have the appropriate quantity to be able to sell the finished good. But one of the other great things, I'm going to go to our balance sheet and show you. So one of the other things that I easily have, and obviously if we do account numbering, it'll be in the right order. But this WIP outsource labor, I can easily see the value, right? I've got my build assembly, I've got my bill, and I can see as I am building my finished good that the value of that outsourced paint is appropriately being allocated correctly. If for some reason it's not, and I've got all of my finished goods completed and I still have a value here, then I know that I need to increase my cost on my finished good for my bill of material. Okay. All right. So our accounts that we have set up. So if I have raw materials and I've got finished goods, those assemblies should all be pointed at this finished goods inventory account on my balance sheet. I can do raw materials for all the inventory parts that are components of my finished good items. The one thing that is hard to track is sub-assemblies. So sometimes I have a lot of clients that will ask, how do I get my sub-assemblies as part, the value as shown on my balance sheet, right? And so if I have a sub-assembly and it is only used as a sub-assembly, it's not ever considered a finished good, then I would recommend that we could set up a GL account for those subassembly situations, right? But if I have an assembly that can be a finished good and a subassembly or nested assembly, then it's too hard to track because again, it can only go to one GL account. Okay, so if it is just considered a sub-assembly, then you could set up that GL and it would reflect those dollars. And you could really be able to see on the balance sheet where it is being built and then goes into the finished good. An example that I would use, or kind of a scenario that I would use, is that if I build my sub-assemblies and they sit on the shelf, and I grab them as I need them to build my finished good items, that would make sense. If my process is a very quick turnaround and I am doing, pretty much my whole manufacturing process all at one time. So I'm taking all the raw components, building my subassembly, and building my finished good within the same day, it's going to never really reflect those dollars in on your balance sheet, as an example. So a good situation again is if I build those sub-assemblies and I've got them sitting on the shelf and I pull those off, that is a good situation where I would have a GL account for that. Okay, so one thing that I promised I would show you is how do I easily build those nested sub-assemblies. So an easy way to build those nested sub-assemblies is using this box here at the bottom. So automatically build required sub-assemblies. If I am wanting the system, when I say build and close, right, and I want it to automatically go create that sub-assembly for me, I want to check that box. If I've got a sub-assembly that has a sub-assembly and I can have, and I want the system to be able to build it all at one time and that works for my workflow, then I would highly, highly, highly encourage you to select this box. It will take away the data entry. It will eliminate any kind of like accident of negative inventory, any of those things. So you let the system do the work for you and build that subassembly. Okay. If you have a situation, so I've had several clients where they're needing to update those sub-assembly items. I have built processes before, so everybody is unique that, not everybody is the same, right? So everybody has their unique situations. And so just kind of talking through a scenario where I need to make modifications to those sub-assemblies, then my recommendation is to put it in a pending state, right? So we can go do that. Mark build as pending, build and close. Okay, so now the system is building the pending builds, right? And so when I go to my pending build report, right, I now have those pending builds, and I've got the ability to go in, and I love how everything is um, in my sample file dated in the future. But I've got my pending builds, and I can go ahead and make the modification to those pending builds for real-time inventory tracking. All right. I know I'm getting close to time. I don't see any additional questions at the moment. So I am going to go back to our slide here. And I just want to remind everyone of our upcoming webinars topics. So cycle counts will be coming up, enhanced receiving, construction, compensation package, 1099 mappings, accounts receivable. So those are our future upcoming topics. If you would like to ask us to do a topic for you, please, please, please feel free to let us know. We want to make sure that we are able to touch on every topic that will help our clients. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope that you learned something from this webinar, and I look forward to our future webinars together. Have a wonderful day.